For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe.
The Rigveda was composed in the Sapta Sindhu region, also known as the Land of the Seven Rivers, which includes the river Indus and its 5 tributaries and the river Saraswati. This region corresponds to the Punjab region in present-day India and Pakistan. But they are not the only rivers mentioned in the Rigveda. In the northwestern region, we find mention of rivers such as Kuba, the present-day Kabul River, Suvastu or Swat River, and Trishtama, which some scholars identify with Gilgit. This shows the boundaries of Rigvedic culture existed as far as the northwestern region of the Indian subcontinent, extending to Afghanistan. In the east, we have rivers such as Ganga, Yamuna, Asmanvati, present-day Assam, showing the Rigvedic sphere of influence existing as far east as the Gangetic Plains. The Rigvedic texts were composed on the banks of these rivers. According to some, the Rigveda could not come from 1900 to 1200 BCE because the Saraswati River did not exist at that time. Discussion about this river has been going on for some time, but recent scientific studies have caused some stir because people are claiming the scientific evidence shows that the Saraswati did not exist between 1900 and 1200. The argument that the Saraswati was dried by the 2nd millennium BCE was popularized in this book here, The Lost River by Michael Danino. You can find advocates of this argument all over the internet. Today, it is commonly accepted that the Gagar and Hakra rivers, which flow now only during monsoon season, are to be identified with the Saraswati River mentioned in the Rigveda. There are alternative suggestions, but the Gagar Hakra seems to fit the descriptions in the Rigveda the best, and this is why the identification is generally accepted. Numerous studies over the past few decades have been able to trace the original course of the Gagar Hakra riverbed. So we have a good idea of where the river flowed, though research into what was going on to the north of it, such as what Himalayan rivers were feeding it, is still ongoing. We also have a good idea of the age of the river. A study published in 2020 reports evidence of fluvial activity in the area that the Saraswati ran through as early as 172 to 174,000 years ago. Most research on the river, however, has focused on the period of the Indus Valley civilization, which peaked between 2600 and 1900 BCE, because scientists and archaeologists have been searching for a reason for the decline of the IVC. And it was thought maybe a change in climate had something to do with it. Maybe the drying up of the Saraswati had something to do with it. Now, keep in mind that the mature period of the IVC comes immediately before the suggested date range of the composition of the Rigveda. A study conducted near the site of the ancient IVC city of Birana, published in 2016, revealed that Birana was settled as early as 9 to 7,000 years ago, next to the Saraswati, when the Saraswati was being fed by an intensified monsoon, but that after 7,000 years ago, the river went into decline. Nevertheless, Birana continued to grow and was an important city after that. So clearly, the failing river was not the cause of Birana's decline. Birana went into decline later. The authors suggested maybe the IBC collapsed for other reasons, such as shifting crop patterns. An important study in 2017 shed new light on the history of the Saraswati. Using optically stimulated luminescence dating, the researchers determined that the Sutlej River, which was feeding the Saraswati, had shifted its course to where it is now, and this caused the Saraswati to go into decline. This shift was completed around 8,000 years ago, long before the mature period of the IVC. Indus urban settlements, they write, thus developed along an abandoned river valley rather than an active Himalayan river. A paper published in 2020 summarized the results so far. The authors assess the situation as follows. Quote, there is enough data to say that the Saraswati Gagar Hakra River flowed in northwest Indian plains and gradually dried up between 15 and 4.3 thousand years ago. The river course, however, kept on flooding and aggrading to the upland level by silt clay sediments. What they mean by kept on flooding is that while the river was no longer perennial after 4.3 thousand years ago, it still flooded during monsoon season. They continue, quote, "The view that the Saraswati River was the lifeline of Indus civilization may not be tenable in light of new results, suggesting considerable drying up of Saraswati River during 15 to 5,000 years ago, much before the advent of mature Indus civilization, 4.5 to 4.4 thousand years before present," unquote. At the same time, a new study was published refining further our understanding of the life of the river. They found that the river was perennial and receiving water from the Himalayas during 80 and 20,000 years ago, and again during 9 and 4.5 thousand years ago. The reason why there was a rejuvenation was because that was when the Sutlej fed the river. The authors suggest that this period of the revived river is what facilitated the development of the early Harappan settlements. Now, so far it looks very clear. After 4.5 thousand years ago, that is 2500 BCE, the river was no longer perennial but annual. That means that during the period when scholars say the Rigveda was composed, the river would not have flowed year-round. But this is what people miss. This is only true for the middle part of the river, the part where the IVC cities were. It is not true for the lower and upper reaches of the river. They write, quote, "Towards the end of the mature Harappan phase, 4.6 to 3.9 thousand years ago, there is a clear evidence of human migrations to the lower and upper reaches of the river, leaving the middle part sparsely populated, which could be attributed to the disorganization of the river as established in this work. The lower reaches of the river in the Hakra sector had possibly remained perennial through a connection from the Sutlej, supporting mature and post-urban Harappan settlements," unquote. Notice the figure here, early Harappan period. The SS is the Saraswati. You can see the Sutlej feeding it. The dots are settlements. Then you have the mature Harappan period. Notice that part of the river has dried up. That is, it is only annual now. The Sutlej, however, is feeding the lower reaches. Then you have the post-urban Harappan period, which is the period that scholars date the Rigveda. The middle part of the river is no longer perennial, but the lower and upper reaches are. And the upper reaches, here, is where Rigvedic society would have existed. You do, in fact, have a perennial Saraswati River here.